Okay, everyone, we have another wonderful Today's Investor episode with a very special guest, Gary Rodriguez, who's not only the top mortgage lender here in town, but also in the nation. We're going to interrupt him a few times in his endeavors here on the phone. He's working with other clients.
We definitely try. I mean, it's all about service. We're all about trying to make sure that we stay in contact with everybody as much as possible.
So he's going to be giving some excellent information. We're talking about FHA loans, we're talking about VA loans, we're talking about the timeline of a loan, what to expect, what to do, what not to do, and anything and everything in the world of lending in real estate. So come and watch this episode. Welcome everyone, welcome to another awesome episode of Today's Investor. We have a special episode this episode because we are going to be focusing on the lending side of the real estate world. And today we have one of the top real estate lenders here in San Antonio who has done numerous loans here in town, has a big team, is working with a big company helping a lot of families get loans on houses and people getting loans on their investment properties. So today we are here with Gary Rodriguez.
Nice to meet you guys.
Excellent. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
So Gary, tell me a little bit about yourself. Why are you a real estate lender that people need to be meeting with, adding to their cell phones on speed dial, and getting in contact with?
Well, I'll tell you, I have a lot of passion for the business. I love it. It's one of those things to where I've kind of transitioned my life to live for real estate. And I think that anybody who pretty much works with me kind of knows that. I mean, I will tell you, a lot of people are like, oh, this guy's looking at his phone all the time, but it's mainly because I'm trying to make sure that everybody's getting taken care of, specifically our clients, the realtors, everybody involved in the transaction.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's true. I was saying just earlier that I do some fake phone calls to Gary just to see if he'll answer. He does every single time. So yeah, he's totally on top of it.
I think that you're probably not the only person that does that, honestly. I get a call at midnight and I'm like, what's this?
But you still take it. Well, that's awesome. Yeah. I know you put service above all things, so you're really able to help a lot of people. And but let's kind of start at the beginning. How did you even get into the world of real estate lending?
Well, I think a lot of loan officers kind of start in bank, and that's what I did. I started in bank back prior to 2007. I was a young guy just looking for a job, decided that I was going to work for a bank. At that point, I kind of excelled, and I kind of went into the mortgage business slowly. And it was a lot different then. It's not like it is now to where you really have to know what you're doing in a sense to get to the next level. At that time, it was mainly a lot of phone calls, a lot of online applications, which is how kind of everybody kind of gets started. At that point, I kind of developed a passion for it, and it just kind of took me through even some of the harder times in real estate.
What is it about the lending business that you really enjoy?
Yeah, I still really get a thrill from the closings. The closings are a huge thing. A lot of loan officers that are doing, a lot of loans don't even go to closings anymore. I still try to do that because that's really where the passion lies, and that's what keeps the fire going inside you.
That's awesome. If you follow Gary on Facebook, you'll see that he actually posts a lot of photos with his clients at the actual closings.
Yeah.
Where the biggest smiles are in those
photos. That's what makes it all worth it. Like I said, it's sometimes difficult to make all of them. I try to make as many as possible, but at the same time, I can't clone myself. Right, you know what I mean? But the closings are the number one thing, and that's really what drives the passion and what makes everything all worth it. Definitely. Because there's a lot to it. There's a lot to the lending side.
No, for sure. There's like a whole world that a lot of people don't know about or haven't learned about.
You're right.
And I love the fact that you make an effort to go to the closings because for the clients, this might be their one major purchase of their life. This is a memorable moment. This is something they'll remember for the rest of their lives, and you're right there.
Yeah, and it's something that I can remember too, because those photos mean a lot to me as well, not just to post a picture or anything along those lines. Those things sometimes, when you're having a tough day and you look at those pictures and you're like, man, we really did some good things for these clients. And those are the things that kind of keep you moving, keep you going about the day, and keep you smiling.
And some of those loans are difficult to get to the closing
Oh,
table.
yeah.
So that's like
Oh, yeah.
your victory pose that we were able to get this
You're
done
right.
for the client, despite all the challenges
You're
that,
right.
that came about.
Many a times I get those 911 calls and people are like, I was going through such and such person and I'm just not really getting the service and so on and so forth. And that's kind of that's what I like to pick up, and I look at the file and I say, you know what, if this is something that's going to be possible, it's not about whether or not the loan was either challenging or not. It's about the fact that this person reached out to me to give my expert opinion, and if they're willing to move forward with it and we're willing to do everything that's needed to get the job done, I'm all for it.
No, that's huge. The fact that they chose to work with you because they could go on Google and look
Absolutely.
for a mortgage lender.
Absolutely.
And not all mortgage lenders are equal.
They're not equal. They're absolutely not equal. I will tell you that. That's one of the number one things that I get questioned is what makes you different than anybody else. And I'll tell you what makes me different is the passion. The passion is a huge, huge thing. And big or small, challenging or not, I'm up for the challenge and I'm up for making a new homeowner. That's what I'm all about.
No, that's definitely it. That's exciting. I try and tell people all the time that, especially from the real estate investing side of things, but this applies for a person that's buying their homestead as well. You need to build the right team. If you have the right team members, if you have the right real estate agent, if you have the right title company escrow officer,
the whole thing will flow together, and that's the way you want it to be. Absolutely.
And having a lender is an important part of having the right team. So finding someone like Gary is definitely something you want to do. So you said you made a transition to doing mortgage lending more full-time around the 2006, 2007 time frame?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, at that time it was just a job, that was 10 years ago. But through progression, we went through a lot of hard times, 07, 08, and so on and so forth.
I was just going to say, so you basically waited till it was the hardest
time, exactly.
To jump in and be like, I'm going to do this.
You're absolutely right. But I'll tell you, it makes me respect the business a lot more.
Sure.
Absolutely. It makes me respect the business a lot more. And I will tell you this, I kind of got going a lot more, around 2010. Mm-hmm. That's really when, I thought to myself, this is going to be my career. And, ever since then, we've been plugging away full speed. You
built some strong fundamentals, I imagine.
Absolutely.
Not only yourself, but the team around you
Absolutely.
to be able to provide better service.
Yeah, and then the folks around me, my immediate core, group of people that I work with, real estate agents involved, we've become more along the lines of friends because of the fact that we work so closely together. And trust me, when I get a deal from them, my main focus at that point is knowing we have a client involved that needs to get closed, and I have somebody who just trusted me with their mortgage, their car payments, their utilities, their families, their babies, everything involved. So those are the things that I think about, not just necessarily here's a name and a number, here, call this person.
Yeah, that's what I personally, from my own experience, have loved about working with you, definitely. Yeah. So you got into the business, you've really been helping a lot of people, so you're literally one of the top lenders here in town. Last year, I saw some awards that you got not only last year, but the year before. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I made San Antonio Business Journal's top 25 loan officers this past year, which is a huge thing for me because even though I made America's top 1%,
America's
top 1%. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
man.
the whole
That's
nation.
Awesome.
Which was huge to me, yes, especially since we live in the San Antonio market. There's a lot of markets that are much larger than ours.
Sure.
But in any case, the San Antonio Business Journal one was very important to me. And I'll tell you why, because predominantly all of the business that was in there was nearly 100% purchase business. And it was all self-sourced, which was huge for me because I don't have, a bank name behind me or anything along those lines. I didn't have, all the people who did business with me last year were people that knew that I was going to get the job done. and cared about me, and I cared about them as well. And that was huge for me. And I'm super happy this year. We're actually tracking to be ahead of last year. So I'm excited to see what 5 years down the line looks like for us.
So now you'll be top 0.5%.
I hope so.
So, I mean, this guy has done some amazing things, and he really takes a lot of focus on the individual. So imagine having a top nation lender on your team. He's very open. You need to reach out to this guy.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you help a lot of individuals, but you also do a lot of business with real estate agents as well. You're a source for them. Every time that they need help in the lending world, I'm sure you've saved a lot of situations to get to the closing table,
absolutely. I mean, I'll tell you this. So a lot of the a lot of the realtors that I work with, they do refer me almost 100% exclusively, but at times, we'll run into a situation where somebody else looks at a file, or the client had somebody else who was working on it, and then all of a sudden, the file's blowing up midway through, and we're there to kind of swoop in and save the day. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I try to focus a lot of my business on helping to develop the realtor as well. A lot of folks that I do business with now, I've been doing business with for years. So we started kind of together, and at that time, they were new, and I was trying to help them get to the level that they're at right now, which I'm happy to say a lot of the realtors that I work with are among one of the top realtors in San Antonio.
It's all about the connections.
Yeah, absolutely.
And all those different things.
Absolutely.
That completely makes sense.
Yeah.
So let's kind of talk about some of the products that you provide, some of the loans that you can help people acquire to make purchases.
Yeah. I will tell you, a majority of my business right now is FHA and VA because I do a lot of first-time home buyers.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So FHA and VA has kind of been my bread and butter. I was one of the top loan officers in the FHA market last year, which is a big thing for me as well, because the first-time home buyer is ultimately my passion. I love to do first-time home buyers. Obviously, we all love move-up buyers, but the first-time home buyers are really where it just you see their faces light up. Yesterday I had a closing, I had to take a selfie with them because they were so excited. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And in any case, I primarily focus a lot on government business. I do your conventional 20% downs. Really, I do whatever the realtor brings me and whatever is best for the client. What I do when I bring them into a home buying consultation is I look over all different things, all aspects, and I kind of present them with multiple options. And we also do bond loans as well. It just all depends, on what the client has. If they absolutely cannot come out with any kind of down payment, then we have a solution for them as well. It does limit you a little bit, but that's usually one of those things to where it's better than rent, effectively.
So you basically have a whole bunch of different options. You present the options and see what best fits for the client based on not only their current situation, but their goals.
Exactly.
I mean, you even have some products that are friendly for the investor. You even were talking about multifamily as well.
Multifamilies. It just depends. There's a lot of different avenues out there. Multifamily and investor. A lot of people don't know this, but it does require a 25% down payment. That's one thing that a lot of investors don't know. So, I feel that that's appropriate to bring up, especially being that this is more of an investor show. 25% down on investor properties is for multifamilies only, so FYI.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So let's kind of hone in on FHA, because FHA is probably the most popular loan out there. When people are buying, they're buying with FHA, and from the investor perspective, this is critical information, because especially if you're doing a flip, if the most popular loan out there is an FHA loan and you're doing a flip, more than likely you're going to be dealing with an FHA pre-approved buyer. So you need to know what that process looks like so that you can be informed. So can you talk a little bit of what it takes to qualify for an FHA loan?
Absolutely. In order to qualify for an FHA loan, typically the buyer is going to be, a 580 plus for one.
Credit score.
One thing that I really want to go over, especially since, like I said, if it is a flip, there are multiple guidelines that the buyer will have to be, we're basically going to have to look at. That being, the property has to be held in title in the seller's name for at least 90 days.
That's huge.
That is huge, and I'll tell you why. Because a lot of times, it won't be recorded until multiple days afterwards. So we really have to look at what day it actually was recorded under that particular seller.
So not the day of closing when documents are signed, when the deed
Correct.
was actually recorded at the courthouse.
Correct.
That's
Correct.
critical because those
That is
days
critical.
might make or break the deal.
Absolutely, absolutely. Also, I get this question a lot is, how many appraisals do I need? If you're past the 90-day time frame, and let's say, for example, you purchased the house for $75,000 and you're selling it to your new buyer for $149,000, you're good. You only need one appraisal. If you're selling it to them for $151,000, which is over 100% of markup value, effectively at that point you will need 2 appraisals, and that's for 6 months.
I didn't even know that. So how did the 2 appraisals happen? Is there a certain time frame for the first one and then a time frame for the second one?
Most of the time what my team's instructed to do is order 2 right off the bat.
Oh, so they
and
happen
get them assigned.
simultaneously?
Yeah, simultaneously.
Okay.
Yeah. Obviously, in today's market, this is maybe something we can talk about later, but in today's market, appraisals aren't exactly fast. And that's because the market's so busy, so we should be happy for that. But there's not as many appraisers to appraise these properties. So effectively, we're trying to get those things ordered up front as quickly as possible, so that way it's not something that hangs up the loan in the future.
And that's huge. When you're working with your lender, and this applies to even if it's not your lender, you're the seller. Communicate with the lender of the buyer and make sure that that lender is on top of their stuff, which includes ordering appraisals. Because
Absolutely.
quite honestly, a lot of lenders, it's very typical that they just kind of wait and they work on their file that's closing the soonest, and then the files back here don't get touched, and then they order an appraisal late, and then the appraiser gets out there late, and then they went out there and then they didn't have proper access to the house, so then they need to come back out, and it can really affect your timelines and you can lose a deal because of it. So having a lender that's on top of it, that is going to order as soon as possible, that's going to get the ball rolling as soon as possible, is critical for you. So that's really important.
Absolutely. And a lot of people, they get concerned about, oh, well, we're not out of option yet, or something along those lines. I mean, the appraiser, we're not going to put in the order and the appraiser's going to go out the next day. You know, so that's something to really keep in mind. It goes
So you
into
can
an order
and then cancel it if
Exactly. We
necessary.
can cancel it if something ends up happening. And that, I will tell you, I tell my team this all the time. Time is more valuable than money when it comes to closing a loan. Because if we have to pay, for example, let's say he does get assigned really quick and we end up having to pay for an appraisal, it's sometimes a cost of doing business. You know what I mean? But it's more important to me that we get that thing closed as quickly as possible, so that way there's not a domino effect going on. You know what I mean?
Completely makes sense.
Yeah,
So-
it very rarely happens, but yeah, it might happen once or twice a year,
Definitely. So we mentioned that FHA is a popular loan. It's an accessible loan. The credit score can be as low as 580. Obviously, a better credit score makes the person
Better
more
tiers,
solid. Exactly.
obviously.
But can you just go over the general timeline process? We've already kind of talked about appraisal, but can you talk about from the moment you get a file, what happens and what happens along the way up until the closing time frame?
Well, my team kind of does things. We have it a specific way, and I'll tell you, we want to try to limit the amount of touches to the buyer. That's one of the first and most important things, because the buyer is going to be engaged the most at day one, right? When they meet with you for the first time. So what we do is we try to gather as much information as possible to where the loan almost is nearly clear to close, but my team is super experienced when it comes to that. So what they're doing is they're looking for large deposits, they're looking for earnest money clearing, they're looking for all those small things to get those done at the initial consultation for signing initial loan disclosures, because that is when we're going to be extremely engaged. We are there to, in a sense, take care of everything, because a lot of folks don't understand, once we finish with that initial consultation, the deal's not closed yet. That's just the initial paperwork.
Right.
So one thing that we have found is, as long as we can get as much information up front and we can get it into underwriting with very minimal conditions that come out, it's sped the process up a lot more. What we do is get as much information, going back to that, as much information up front, going through setup, getting an appraisal order, title, verification of employments, anything along those lines that are maybe still trailing, because effectively what we try to do is get verifications of employment during the pre-approval process, but sometimes that's not always the case. It just all depends.
Right.
You know what I mean? Most employers nowadays do everything electronically, which is really nice because it's something that can be done really fast.
Speeds up the
but
process. Sometimes
you have to get it written, and you're kind of at the liberty of a third party at that point. So, sometimes they're quick, sometimes they're not. You know what I mean? At that point, we kind of transition the loan into underwriting. At that point, everybody feels a lot better. There's no more third party contingencies or anything like that. And we do a second touch to the buyer, which is usually what we call a clear to close touch. And, all this transpires within about a 2-week time frame, 2.5 weeks.
So let me just make sure that we have clarity here, and I'm going to go all the way to the beginning. The beginning is, somebody comes to you and they say, I want a loan.
Yep.
The first steps that they do is they give you their financials.
Their initial application. We take their initial application. At that point, my team's instructed to submit a needs list to the client, okay? A lot of times these are over the phone,
Sure.
You know what I mean? So we send out a needs list and we give them a deadline, get this to us within 24 to 48 hours so that way we can get an actual approval for you. And usually, like I said, if you do all those things up front, the client is extremely engaged at that point.
Right.
So if they're really, really interested in making sure that they're approved, they will get that thing to you so fast your head will spin. You know what I mean?
So they give you all the necessary documentation
Correct.
you need, and then you can basically do a pre-approval, right?
Exactly.
And give them a pre-approval letter that says you're, based on the information we received thus far, you're pre-approved to X amount.
X amount,
Whether that's
exactly.
120,000 or 350,000.
Yep, absolutely.
So then they haven't found a home at this point in most cases.
Correct. In most cases. Like I said, sometimes, that buyer will come to me super hot, ready to go look at a house right then and there. And, those are the situations that are a little bit more tricky, and you're trying to get as much information as possible.
Sure.
Especially in the market that we're in right now. It's like
it's hot right
they
now.
see a house on the market and then boom, it's gone the next day.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we've noticed is a big challenge. So
Sure. So you give them the pre-approval letter, and then they go around looking at all the potential houses for them, and they're submitting that pre-approval letter with their offer. And the reason that's important is, like you said earlier, this is a hot market.
Yep.
So sellers are receiving, in a lot of cases, multiple offers.
Multiple offers,
So if
exactly.
the buyer can present an offer with a pre-approval letter, then they can basically show that they've taken steps to ensure that they can get a loan.
Exactly.
And especially and that's why your reputation is so important.
Yeah,
If
absolutely.
the listing agent sees, hey, this is a pre-approval from Gary Rodriguez, they're going to be like,
That's the
okay,
idea.
we know this is a loan that's going to close, because a lot of people can get pre-approvals based on partial information or not a full picture, and then down the road the loan falls apart, or they don't pass underwriting, those types of things.
Absolutely.
So they get the pre-approval. Let's say they make an offer on the house, they get accepted. Then at that point, what's the next step?
The next step effectively usually takes with about a day or two. I get a receipted copy of the contract.
Right.
In the meanwhile, like I said, anything that's still lingering, my team is consistently going to the buyer to get as much as possible.
Because you're preparing.
Exactly. So at that time, all the wheels start spinning, okay? Once that contract is in our lap, effectively we want to have a file that's at least 80 to 90% complete, okay? Pending any small things like, your earnest money or anything along those lines that take time to actually transpire, appraisals and so on.
So that's huge. You really try and do all the work on the front end.
Correct.
So you're building in this buffer so that if things go wrong, you have time. Whereas most people do all the stuff on the back end right before closing, and then they're stuck because something came up they didn't anticipate.
Absolutely right. If there's ever kind of a small snag or something along those lines, it's better to have more time to fix it than not. Ideally, we want to catch everything up front, but this isn't a perfect business, and anybody who tells you it is, they're lying. You know what I mean?
Beware of those people.
It's not perfect, and my job is effectively to make it as perfect as it can be.
Sure. So you get a receipted contract. You mentioned you're trying to work on getting the full spectrum of this potential person that's going to be receiving the loan.
Correct.
Then the next step is ordering the appraisal.
Yep.
So then you'll send out, you'll order the appraisal so that the appraiser can go out, in this case, whether one or two, based on that that threshold you mentioned?
I want to be clear as to how this works because I think a lot of agents don't really know how the appraisal process works. So when we order an appraisal, we send it to an appraisal management company, okay? Appraisal management companies are sometimes...
Which is a third party.
It's a third party. They call them AMCs, okay? So if you ever hear your loan officer that you're working with say, hey, it's at the AMC or whatever the case may be, it's because it was ordered through a third party, okay? And then that third party then shops out appraisers that are in your area, okay? And it's based off of availability and, of course, cost. You know what I mean? How much you're willing to pay for the appraisal and what kind of time frame you've set out for them. Effectively, what they do is the AMC is instructed to try to get the fastest available appraisal time turn time, and for as minimal cost as possible, obviously, because we want to pass on less cost to our buyer.
Quick question then on that. What is a typical standard? Not even the cheapest, but like what to expect on price for a standard?
Okay,
appraisal?
so most of our appraisals are about $495.
So about
okay?
500.
Yeah, about 500.
Okay.
That's not always the case in every single transaction. I sometimes I'll get a transaction that's out in Pleasanton or a rural area, and those are ones that we're having to pay $700 for sometimes
Because of the distance.
because of the distance.
Ah,
and
okay.
a lot of people don't understand it's supply and demand. So there's a lot of homes to appraise right now.
Demand right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of homes right now to appraise. So a lot of times appraisers are picking and choosing the jobs that they actually have to do.
Sure.
And that being said, sometimes that Pleasanton contract that you got, the appraisal might take 2.5 weeks to get, and we still might have to pay $700 for it because it's off the grid a little bit, and it's not in your typical residential area to where the appraiser can say, hey, let me just go on down. There's going to be plenty of comps, easy $500.
So let's kind of look at two case scenarios. The appraiser went out, we received the appraisal. Everybody's like, that's a stress moment for a lot
for
of
everybody.
For buyers, sellers, lenders, agents, everybody. We receive an appraisal. Let's assume that the appraisal came in less than the sales price. What are some options? What occurs at that point?
Okay. At that point, it just all depends. And I want to kind of go over this because it depends on the actual product that you go through. So if it's a VA product, you're going to get what's issued a Tidewater, okay?
A Tidewater?
It's called a Tidewater, exactly. Okay. So that means effectively the appraisal looks like it's going to be coming in short. They typically reach out to the listing agent at that point prior to actually writing the appraisal because he's having issues with coming up with comparables. So at that point, he gives you the opportunity to see if you have better comparables than what he's coming
So the
up
listing agent can present what they see.
Exactly. Exactly. Instead of him writing the contract and then us trying to dispute the contract.
Gotcha.
Because it's nearly impossible after the actual appraisal is written.
Right.
Okay? FHA, on the other hand, they're going to turn in the appraisal as is, whatever it appraised for, and then you can either go into a dispute process, okay, which, when you submit comps, you're not going to get an immediate response, next day. A lot of folks think that, but it's not possible. Or, at that point, we either have to come to terms with the value might just be what that value is. You know what I mean? And then we can cross that bridge as we get to it. One thing that I am seeing a lot of folks on the listing side is trying to take away concessions, which, it does net the client. I mean, it does net the seller more, but a lot of times at that point, the client can't close.
Because they weren't anticipating the out-of-pocket expense.
Exactly. Because a lot of FHA buyers nowadays, they only have the minimum investment most of the time.
Right.
A lot of times, we'll make some of those work, especially my team, we'll get creative with trying to help with the closing costs as well on our side. But, effectively, the buyer's only going to be able to come up with what the buyer can come up with. And we hate to see deals like that not happen, especially when, we have such a crazy market right now, and we get it. It's business. Everybody wants more for their house, but a lot of times that could kill a deal.
And just a quick side note for real estate agents, it's very helpful if you have the conversation with the other side, whether it's buyer or seller, on what could or couldn't work or what you'd be willing to do, your side would be willing to do if the appraisal does not meet the sales price, so that when that comes in, you've already kind of planted the seed, you started to have a conversation, and you can still lead to a successful agreement that can work based on the new appraisal.
Correct.
Whereas some people don't have that conversation. The appraisal comes in, it's a shock. You try and renegotiate, you can't come to terms, and the deal falls through.
Correct.
All right, so that was one scenario. Now let's talk about the second scenario, which is the appraisal comes in and it came in where we wanted it to, right under the sales price. Everybody's happy.
Yep.
Then what happens?
Then at that point, typically by that point, we have enough to submit for a clear to close.
Okay.
Ideally speaking, we don't want to be waiting for really anything except for the appraisal by that point, because we should have got so much information up front.
Sure.
We're going to underwrite the file initially without the appraisal, obviously, because that's when we get our conditional approval. And we have 1 second round of underwriting. We only want 2 touches in underwriting. That's it. Okay? That second round of underwriting should be a clear to close. So at that point, I'm starting to set expectations. You know,
so when you say a second round of underwriting, that means before and after the appraisal?
Yes.
Okay.
Before and after the appraisal. Before the appraisal, that's your conditional approval. Once the appraisal comes in, we're submitting for a clear to close underwrite, which is our second touch.
They do a final look.
Yep.
That's the last big hurdle.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's when everyone's really happy. Is they pass
by this
appraisal
point,
and underwriting.
by the second round of underwriting, effectively, most pertinent or deal breakers, in a sense, have already been, gone through, and there's really no issues. It's more formality at that point.
Sure.
Yeah.
So then clear to close, and then at that point?
At that point, we transition the loan into closing. It just all depends on the turn times for attorneys, depends on the title company, obviously, their capacity. But most of the time, we're closing within 24 hours of that time.
You're sending the docs to the title company. They prepare the final closing documents, and then that's when you take the happy selfie.
That's when I'm taking that selfie.
So that's awesome. That's an awesome timeline of how it all works, a good understanding for people to have on what the process looks like, whether they're on the buying side or selling side.
Yeah.
So quick question, and this is important in my mind.
Yeah.
Especially if you're like a real estate agent and you're trying to guide your client. What should people not do during this process from, hey, we got our pre-approval, we're trying to get to the closing. What should the buyer or the person trying to get the loan not be doing?
I would recommend they not breathe. I'm just kidding.
Hold your breath.
In all honesty, just don't have credit pulls. Don't have credit pulls. Don't quit your job. Try to work your 40 hours. That's something that we see a lot of. Sometimes we'll get an updated pay stub, and it'll be short hours.
That last week.
Sometimes those are the small things that make or break a deal, because it goes based on averages a lot of times. It all depends. If the person's salary, then that's one of those things to where it's going to be the same no matter what. But we have seen it to where a buyer has taken a lot of time off in the in between, and it's kind of threw the numbers off a little bit.
They're taking that vacation a little bit early.
Yes, exactly. Obviously credit pulls. That's the number one reason. And a lot of times, I'll tell you this, we try not to structure things that are that tight. Sometimes they are. The buyer signs something up front with us, saying that they're not going to open up credit or get their credit pulled. But things happen, and it happens a couple times a year. It's never fun.
Yeah.
But we end up getting the job done no matter what.
Okay.
So
don't
do that or breathe.
Don't buy a car. Don't buy a boat.
Yes.
Don't put a bunch of money on your credit card.
Yes,
Make sure to work fully.
Yes.
Then after you close, you can go do whatever you want.
Exactly. Then yes. Exactly.
Awesome. So next question I have for you, Gary, and this is an important one because I've mentioned, I tell people all the time, you need to be building the team around you if you're an investor building your business, or if you're trying to make the most important purchase of your life, which is a new home. You need to have people on your team that are experts, professionals, that are going to be able to help you make the right decisions, guide you through situations, surprises, things that
feel comfortable.
Exactly.
They have to feel comfortable.
So tell me from a lender perspective, what should people be looking for in a lender? And how can they, when let's say they're talking to 3 different lenders and 3 different lender companies, how can they make a decision on which one will work for them?
I think what people have to look at is, first of all, like we just said, most importantly is who makes them feel the most comfortable. Okay?
That's critical.
That is critical. It is very critical because this is a huge transaction. You have to think about it as a lender as well, that it's not just another loan closed. It is a huge thing for that one individual person, and you have to basically help that one individual person get to whatever they want to do. You know what I mean? I will tell you this. Another thing is expertise.
That's important too.
It is.
You don't want somebody that doesn't know what they're doing.
Yeah, you're right.
Guiding you through this.
You're absolutely right. And I see it, 9 times out of 10. I'll look at a file that somebody else looked at and I'm like, this is really not that bad. We can figure this thing out. But it's all about putting it together in your head. A lot of times when I'm talking to the buyer initially, I'm trying to figure out ways that'll make it easier on them, whereas a lot of people are kind of just thinking about it from a linear, standpoint. I think about it from a wide angle, and I'm looking at it like, hey, what's the best way or the best option to get this client into a home, and what's going to be easiest for them, and what kind of documentation is going to be the easiest, and what program is going to be the easiest, and what we can do to make the process smoother. So we're all about processes on my team. It's all about processes.
Systems, yeah.
Systems, exactly.
I think that's huge. I mean, to your point with the being comfortable.
Yeah.
Because, from that perspective, you want to be interacting. If you're trying to find a lender that's going to be working with you, you're going to be in close interaction with that person for a good amount of time.
Yep.
And if you're feeling uncomfortable in the beginning, that can lead to potential problems and disconnects down the road. So feeling comfortable is huge.
Yeah.
And then as far as the expertise, that's super important.
Yeah.
Because there will be surprises that come up. The appraisal didn't come in at the right price point.
Yeah.
Maybe something came up in the financials. How are we handling that problem?
Cash to close, that's a lot of things. Cash to close, what can we do? Can we work on insurance? Can we, do this and do that? Or, the debt to income ratio is a little bit off. So we're trying to work with ways to make it, kind of fit in this little bitty box. And a lot of times I'll do that without people even knowing. You know what I mean? Because I already know how to work through something like that. And it just feels smooth because
you're handling all these issues.
I've done hundreds of loans. You know what I mean? We've done over 100 loans already this year. And we're only halfway through the year.
This is a good year.
Yeah, it's a good year.
That's critical, because if you have somebody that's lacking in experience, lacking in knowledge, lacking in expertise, when a problem arises, they might say, oh, there's only one solution to this problem and we can't find that solution, or that solution doesn't work for our situation, compared to someone that's knowledgeable that says, actually there's 4 or 5 different solutions.
Yeah.
Let's work on each of these until we can have one that connects so we can get you to the ultimate goal.
You're absolutely right.
That's huge. Right. Anything else that people need to be looking for when they're looking for a lender?
Fees, of course, because cash to close is probably one of the hardest, things to kind of work towards.
How can someone determine the fees? Do they just ask the lender up front?
Yeah, ask the lender up front. What are your lender fees? It's a very typical question. I get it all the time. We've tried to structure the way I've tried to structure the business, for us as a whole, and as a team, we want to do more loans for less cost. Okay,
volume.
More loans for less cost. So we want to help hundreds of of clients, rather than just do 5 to 10 loans a month at maximized profits. That's not the way I like to do business.
Right.
And it's helped us. It's helped us. We're trying to be not necessarily the cheapest, because we offer excellent service.
Sure.
We have a team.
Sure.
But we're not trying to be the most expensive either.
Well, it puts the focus on the individual and what they're trying to accomplish, rather than the fees. How much can I get out of this loan?
Exactly. I'm all about balance, okay? Good fees, good rates equals positive outcome, okay? When it comes time to put in an offer, we want to put in with not too much closing costs to where we're going to scare off the seller, because in this market, we all know that's one of the number one things that we're seeing, okay? But, we want to make sure that we get enough to cover the buyer's expenses up front. So that being said, we're trying to balance the deal.
Right.
We're trying to get a good good interest rate with good fees, so that way it makes it attractive for all parties. Okay, so that's why 9 times out of 10, when our offer goes out, I'm also calling the listing agent to kind of tell them a little bit where that transaction is,
Right.
so that way they know that we've done all our homework, and that we're not trying to ask for too much on the closing cost side. We're trying to ask for just enough to get us all to the closing table,
Right.
seller and buyer included.
To increase our chances of success.
Exactly.
Now, something that I always tell people when they're trying to add anyone to their team, whether it's a lender or not, is the way in which they communicate to you and how that conversation is. And what I mean by that is basically someone, when you're talking to a lender and you submit the application, how quickly are they saying, hey, I received it, we're going to get an answer to you in 24 hours? Or if you call, do they answer the phone? If you're emailing, texting, how quickly do they respond to that?
Time is of the essence on everything. You know what I mean? I hate to say, you guys have probably seen me look at my phone a couple times. I know that time is of the essence, even though, this is, an hour segment or whatever the case may be. That 1 hour could mean the difference between whether or not my client gets a home or not. And I will tell you, my wife will tell you, I carry my laptop with me pretty much everywhere, and that's because it's effectively part of my body. So, and
It's
the
your
reason,
fourth child.
it really is. And the reason for that is because I don't want to be responsible for a client not getting an offer in on time and them not buying the house of their dreams.
Right.
I think about those things, and a lot of loan officers don't.
And it's something that it's a window into how someone treats you and responds to you in the very beginning of the process is a window into how they're going to be interacting with you throughout the entire process.
Exactly.
Same with like a contractor. If you have a contractor come to look at the house, give you a bid, how professional does that bid look to you? Did it take him 4 days to get you the bid compared to that same day or the next day? How you do anything is how you do everything, and being mindful of that is really important.
Absolutely.
And on your case, you have a whole team too.
Yeah.
So whenever you're not available because of one reason or another, somebody on your team is.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. And I'm.
By the way, what's the name of that team?
Oh, the Team Rodriguez, guys. Hashtag the Team Rodriguez.
That's right. This team.
This team right here.
Number one team right here.
Number one team. Eventually.
So you have a whole team backing you,
Yeah.
want to help you out, make sure you're giving the proper service to your clients.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So I know that we have some potential Facebook questions coming up, but I also wanted to find out, make sure you're asking your questions so Gary can answer them.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, people watching this, they're trying to develop a relationship with a lender, whether it's on that one home that they're buying, or they're trying to do multiple loans on their investment property, somebody they can go to that's reliable and consistent. How can people reach you? How can people find you? What's the best way in which
Well,
to
the
do
best
that?
way to contact me is, you can contact me in a number of ways. Anybody who's friends with me on Facebook knows that I am always posting on Facebook, and it's because I love it. I love to share, fun things with everybody. I want to make their day bright, whether it's something kind of funny or even motivational. I think a lot of people in the morning wake up and they're a little tired, so I like to throw something out there to get them a little excited and fired up, whether, they do real estate or, they sell cars or they do anything, you know what I mean? It's all about being positive on a daily basis. You can reach me on Facebook, like I said, or you can reach me on my cell phone at 210-421-0566. I am pretty much readily available anytime for you, or you can also email me at gary.rodriguez@onqfinancial.com. So.
Well, people definitely need to follow you on Facebook because I love your Facebook. You're always posting, like you said, some good stuff.
And my sock pictures at closing, that is trademarked, by the way.
But I mean, you have your happy clients on there. You show a little bit of your life, and you're a happy and giving individual. So.
We try to be. I try to live every day to the fullest. We'll just say that. I love to be positive. I love to make people happy. Like I said, not even just clients, but just everybody involved. Everybody that's involved in my life, I try to make a positive impact on their lives.
Definitely. So now that we're wrapping up, did you have any final words or pieces of advice, any tidbits or anything that you want final share?
follow me on Facebook. You'll know everything that
There
you
you
need to
go.
know about me.
That's right. Watch this episode a few times to get all the information that you need.
Correct.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you everyone. Thank you for watching this episode of Today's Investor. We had a wonderful guest.
Appreciate you guys having me.
That's right.
Appreciate
Not only
that.
top lender in San Antonio, but in the nation. So this is a special, special moment.
We try.
That's right.
You're making me blush.
But you know, a lot of good information here. Make sure to connect with Gary not only on Facebook, but you can reach out to him and his team, and he can definitely help you with your lending leads or lending needs. And if you're a real estate agent and you need to provide better service to your clients, reach out to him. He can get your people qualified quickly, easily, and give them great service. So definitely reach out to Gary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, I appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it, bud.